Hey guys, Jason Timothy here, musicsoftwaretraining.com, and in this video I'm going to get into some dynamic EQ and use of the envelope follower with a little bit of automation to kind of sort out some issue that I have with a drum loop. So I've got this drum loop right here. Overall I like it, but that perk sound is just too bright and I'm not really feeling it. But the problem is I don't want to dull the whole drum loop by just dropping that EQ. So I want it to be more dynamic. So only when that certain perk sound comes in is it going to kind of remove certain frequencies. So I'll show you a before and after, and then I'll give you a walkthrough of how I approach this. Here's before. And here's after. Much more subdued, and I really like the way that this came out, but it doesn't lose the dynamic frequencies of the rest of the drum loop. So let's start with some solutions that don't work, so you understand why I would go through the process of dynamic EQ. So the first thing is we've got the percussion happening at the same time as a kick. So we can't just come in here to our envelope and try to drop out the volume. Obviously, we're going to lose the kick, all right? And we can't just EQ out the part we don't like necessarily. If we come in here, I'll come in real close so we can see where it's happening. So it's like this frequency right here, right? So we can't just pull this out. Although that does subdue the sound, it also subdues the dynamics of the whole rest of the drum loop. So it dulls the whole thing out, which we don't want. So what we really want to do is just duck this out only when that part comes in. So I'll show you how I approach this here. I'll just recreate what I did over here on this track. Let me just start like this. If we drag in an EQ, and we'll just find that spot, right? So we found the location, and now I'm going to group this track. So I'm going to duplicate this, and you'll see why in just a bit. And then what I'm going to do here, this will be our dynamic. And this is going to be kind of like our ghost track, because we're not going to hear this. But this is going to trigger the dynamics. So let's come over here and find that frequency, right? So what we're going to do here is we'll turn this off, but I'm going to turn up the gain here so we exaggerate where this is happening. And we want to exaggerate it a lot, so I'm going to duplicate this just to make sure that we're really pumping that frequency when it comes in. Okay, great. So after that, what we want to do is we want to pull in an envelope follower. Also, by the way, what we want to do is we want to pull out all the other frequencies. So we're just working with this here. Now, as you can see, now this spikes every time that hits, right? So what I want to do is I want to map this over here to our EQ right here. So we're going to go over here and we'll map it to our gain, which is great. And I'll just widen this just a touch. We're going to come back over here and we're going to map it the other one. So we're going to map this gain here as well. There we go. Okay, great. So now you'll see movement here. It's not going to be correct, but you'll see, right? So you're seeing movement, but the problem is it's going the other direction. It's turning up, and we want it to turn down every time the volume gets too loud. So in order to do that, we're going to reverse this here. So we're going to bring these to 0, and we don't want to bring this to 100% because we want it to start at the 0 point here. And if we bring it to 100%, then it's going to bring it all the way up to the top. If you notice over here, it'll bring this all the way up to the top, and we just want it to go from 0 down to -15 or whatever it is. So we're just going to make this 50%, and we'll do the same here. And now when we look at this, we've got our dynamic EQ happening. All right, great. So it's very short, and we want a little bit more noticeable result here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add to kind of the fall here. And this is like more of a decay. So now it's much more subdued, but the problem is also in here in this frequency is the snare. And if we compare that to having this off, as you can hear, we're subduing the snare a little bit too. Doesn't sound terrible, but we could do better than that. So what we're going to do is we're going to automate this here so that this turns off during the snare, but then stays on the rest of the time because it's only listening for that frequency. And the snare is the only other thing that's really causing it. So we're just simply going to right click here. And then it'll show up here as the device on, okay? So we're just going to come in here, and then wherever the snare is, right here, and we'll just pull it down during the snare so we don't lose any of that dynamic. And then I'm just going to kind of duplicate this across. So let's 2, 3, 4. Pull that down there. And then we'll just replace this. So we'll just duplicate this across like so. And then we'll apply it to this one as well. So we got that. Great, so now this EQ is not going to be affected during the snare, but only during the percussion. So now, so there you go. That is how I can solve dynamic EQ issues. I'm sure the first time through that you watch this, it looks a little bit confusing, so feel free to watch it as many times as you need to really get it. So there you go, envelope followers to create dynamic EQ.